Before we begin, if you're enjoying these stories from law enforcement across Indian country, please subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. It helps us bring you more of these accounts from places most people never hear about. And I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. Now, let's talk about what happened on the Brighton Reservation in 1998. My name is Tim Billy. I worked as both a Seminole Tribal Police officer and a wildlife conservation officer in the Brighton Reserve in South Central Florida. If you've never heard of Brighton before, it's a place located northwest of Lake Okeechobee, covering approximately 40,000 acres of grasslands, wetlands, and palm thickets. It's primarily a cattle ranching area. The Seminole tribe owns one of the most successful cattle ranching operations in the state, which has surprised many who assumed the reservations were solely about poverty and casinos. But we've got alligators too, thousands of them. In the canals, in the retention ponds, in every creek and marsh on the reservation. They're part of life here, same as the cattle in the heat and the afternoon thunderstorms that roll in every summer day like clockwork. Part of my job was managing the gator population, making sure they didn't get into the cattle ponds, relocating problem animals, and conducting an annual census to track population health. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission required it, even on tribal land, and I didn't mind. I'd grown up around gators, respected them, understood them. They're not evil, not monsters. They're ancient survivors, perfect predators who've been doing the same thing for 200 million years. That's what I believed anyway, until the fall of 1998. It was late September, still hot as hell, humidity so thick you could drink it. I was out on the reservation's east pastures with my partner, Tommy Osceola, conducting the annual census. Tommy was pure Seminole, spoke the language fluently, knew every old story and tradition. I was half Seminole, half white, raised by my mother after my white father left when I was 3. Tommy liked to give me shit about being a half-breed, but it was good-natured. We'd been friends since we were kids, running wild through these same swamps. We were in my airboat, moving slowly through a canal system near the old citrus groves. The noise of the fan made conversation impossible, but we didn't need to talk. We'd done this census together for 5 years. Tommy spotted and counted. I recorded data and checked for tagged animals. The tagging program had started back in the 60s when the tribe first started managing the gator population scientifically. They'd tag juveniles and adults, track growth rates and movement patterns. Most of those old tags were long gone, the gators either dead or grown too large for the old metal bands to remain attached. But occasionally we'd find one, a piece of living history. Tommy tapped my shoulder and pointed. I throttled down the engine, and the sudden quiet was almost painful after the roar. About 30 feet ahead, sunning on the bank, was a massive bull gator. Had to be 13, maybe 14 feet. Old, scarred, missing part of his tail. "Big boy," Tommy said. "Probably the dominant male for this whole section." I grabbed my binoculars and studied him. He's tagged, left front leg, looks like. Jesus, that's an old one. How old? Can't tell from here. I'm going to get closer. Tommy shot me a look. "Tim, he's too big. You get that close, he's going to consider it a challenge. I just need to read the tag number. Wildlife Commission will want to know if we've got animals this old still carrying original tags." I nosed the airboat to the bank about 10 feet from the gator. He didn't move, just watched us with those prehistoric eyes. Calm, patient. I've always said you can tell a gator's age by his eyes. Young ones are nervous, twitchy. Old ones have seen it all. This one had eyes like he'd seen everything twice. I pulled out the telephoto camera and zoomed in on the tag. It was old, corroded, barely legible, but I could make out the number. B0847, and below that, the year, 1962. Tommy, this tag is from 1962. So, that's when the program started, right? Yeah, but Tommy, that means this gator has been carrying this tag for 36 years. Gators can live a long time, but the tags don't. The metal corrodes, the animal grows, the tag falls off or gets too tight. I've never seen one last more than 20 years, tops. Maybe it's a replacement tag, same number, newer installation. Maybe, but look at the corrosion. That's not 20 years of wear, that's original. I took a dozen photos, then carefully moved the airboat away. The big gator watched us go, still unmoving. As we drifted back into the canal, I had this strange feeling, like I'd just looked into the eyes of something that shouldn't exist. We continued the census, spotting and counting another 47 gators in that canal system. Normal sizes, normal behavior. But I couldn't shake the feeling from that big bull. Something was wrong about him, though I couldn't articulate what. That evening, back at the tribal police station, I uploaded the photos to my computer and started cataloging the day's data. My office was small, cluttered with field guides and wildlife management manuals. I'd decorated it with pictures of my daughter, Lily, who was 8 and lived with her mother in Fort Pierce. My ex-wife, Jessica, had left the reservation 5 years ago. Couldn't stand the isolation, the heat, the feeling of being cut off from what she called the real world. Lily visited every other weekend, and those were the best days of my life. I was studying the photos of the big gator when my boss, Chief Raymond Tiger, knocked on my doorframe. Working late? Just finishing up the census data, found something interesting. I showed him the photos. Raymond was in his 50s, a traditionalist who'd grown up in a Chickie village and learned English as a second language. He was respected across the tribe, a man who balanced the old ways with the necessities of modern law enforcement. He studied the photo of the tag. 1962. That's impossible. That's what I said. I'm going to send these to Fish and Wildlife, see if they have any records of long-term tagged animals. Do that, but Tim, be careful. Careful of what? It's just an old gator. Raymond's expression was serious. My grandfather used to tell stories about gators that lived too long. Gators that had seen things they shouldn't see, eaten things they shouldn't eat. He said they could move between the waters of now and the waters of then. Raymond, you don't believe that. I believe my grandfather knew things we've forgotten. And I believe that when you find something impossible, you should ask why it's possible. He left, and I sat there thinking about his words. I wasn't a traditionalist like Raymond. I'd gone to the University of Florida, studied biology, learned to think in terms of data and evidence. But I also knew that the Seminole had survived in these swamps for centuries by paying attention to things that seemed impossible. I sent the photos to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission and went home to my small house on the reservation. I heated up leftover fry bread, drank a beer, and tried not to think about gators with tags from before I was born. The call came at 3 a.m. I was deep in a dream about Lily, about taking her fishing in the canals, when my phone started ringing. I grabbed it, groggy and disoriented. Billy. Tim, it's Tommy. You need to get out here, now. What's wrong? Remember that big gator, the one with the old tag? Yeah? Some ranchers found him an hour ago. Dead. Belly up in the canal. They thought maybe poachers, so they called tribal police. Tim, you need to see this. I was in my truck in 5 minutes, driving through the darkness toward the east pastures. The humidity was worse at night, a wet blanket that made everything sticky and close. I passed cattle sleeping in the fields, their eyes reflecting my headlights like green coins. Tommy was waiting at the canal with 2 ranchers and another tribal police officer, Danny Johns. They'd set up portable lights, and in the harsh white glare, I could see the gator floating in the shallow water. Definitely the same one. 14 feet of prehistoric predator, dead. What killed him? I asked. Don't know, Tommy said. No obvious wounds. But Tim, we were about to flip him over to check when we saw something. In his mouth. I waded into the canal, the warm water soaking my jeans. Up close, the gator looked even more massive. His jaws were slightly open, and I could see what Tommy meant. There was something lodged in his throat. Hand me the flashlight. Tommy passed it over and I shined it into the gator's mouth. What I saw made my stomach turn. It was a hand, a human hand, pale and waterlogged, protruding from the gator's throat. Jesus Christ, I whispered. There's more, Danny said. Look at the wrist. I looked closer. On the wrist was a watch. A digital watch, the kind you could buy at any Walmart. The face was cracked, but I could make out the brand. Casio. We need to call this in, I said. Get the tribal investigators out here, and we need to recover the body. It took 4 of us to drag the gator out of the water and onto the bank. In the harsh light, with water streaming off its scales, it looked less like an animal and more like a nightmare made flesh. We'd seen gators take people before, tourists mostly, idiots who got too close to feed them or thought it was safe to swim in posted areas. But this felt different. I called the Tribal Investigative Unit, then contacted the medical examiner's office in Brighton. By sunrise, we had a full scene set up, with tape and lights and people taking photographs. The Tribal Council had authorized a necropsy, and the wildlife veterinarian, Dr. Irina Kane, arrived just as the sun was breaking through the palm trees. Dr. Kane was good, methodical, and calm. She'd done dozens of gator necropsies looking for causes of death, checking for diseases. But I could see her expression change when she started opening the stomach. Tim, you're going to want to see this. I approached as she carefully extracted the stomach contents. There were the usual things. Fish bones, turtle shells, bits of unidentified mammal. But there was also more human remains. An entire arm, severed at the shoulder. A leg, still wearing a sneaker, pieces of a torso bloated and partially digested. This gator has been feeding on a human, Dr. Kane said quietly. Recently, from the state of decomposition, maybe a week ago. Can you determine anything about the victim? She examined the remains carefully. Male, I think. Adult. The watch suggests someone young, maybe 20s or 30s. But Tim, look at this. She pointed to the arm. The flesh was gray-green, badly decomposed, falling away from the bone in places. This level of decomposition, in Florida, heat and humidity, takes months. Not a week. What are you saying? I'm saying these remains are at least 6 months old, maybe longer, but they were eaten recently. You can see the fresh tears in the tissue, the lack of gastric acid damage to the outer flesh. This gator consumed these remains within the last few days. I felt something cold settle in my chest. That doesn't make sense. No, it doesn't. We spent the next hour cataloging everything. Dr. Kane took samples for DNA analysis, photographed every piece of remains, made careful notes about the state of decomposition. I collected the watch, bagged it as evidence. As the tribal investigators started wrapping up the scene, Tommy pulled me aside. Tim, you know what this means, right? Someone's been dead for months, but the gator just ate them. How is that possible? I don't know. Maybe the body was preserved somehow. Frozen, maybe, or kept in sealed container. In Florida? In summer? Come on, man. You know that doesn't make sense. He was right. It didn't make sense. I went back to the station and started running missing persons reports. If we could identify the victim, maybe we could figure out what happened. The watch gave us something to work with, at least. Casio, digital, black band, common, but the investigators might be able to track sales. I was deep in the database when I got a call from Dr. Kane. "Tim, I've got preliminary DNA results. We got lucky. The victim is in the system." "Who is it?" His name was Robert Marsh, 28 years old, from Okeechobee. He was reported missing 2 weeks ago. Failed to show up for work, his apartment was empty, car was gone. Family filed a report. 2 weeks. Not 6 months. But the decomposition said 6 months minimum. "Dr. Kane, are you sure about the timeline?" "The decomposition?" "I'm sure. I've been doing this for 15 years. Those remains have been decomposing for months, Tim. But according to the database, Robert Marsh was alive and well 6 months ago. He went missing 2 weeks ago." I thanked her and hung up, my mind racing. 2 possibilities. Either the remains weren't Robert Marsh, or something impossible was happening. I drove to Okeechobee that afternoon, to Robert Marsh's last known address. It was a small apartment complex, the kind where you paid by the week and didn't ask questions about your neighbors. The manager let me into Marsh's unit. It was clean, orderly. Bed made, dishes washed, nothing that suggested a hurried departure. I searched carefully, looking for anything that might explain what happened. In the bedroom closet, I found a box of personal items. Photos, mostly. Robert with friends, Robert at the beach, Robert holding up a fish he'd caught. And then I found one that made my blood run cold. Robert standing next to a canal, grinning, holding a fishing pole. Behind him, partially visible in the water, was a gator. A big one, and on its front left leg, clearly visible even in the old Polaroid, was a metal tag. I flipped the photo over, written in faded ink, "Big boy at the canal, June 1998. 3 months ago. Robert Marsh had been at that canal 3 months ago, had seen that gator, had taken this photo. The same gator that had just been found dead with Robert's remains in its stomach. I drove back to Brighton in a daze, my mind trying and failing to make sense of it. Robert had been alive 3 months ago. He'd gone missing 2 weeks ago, but his remains showed 6 months of decomposition, and they'd been recently eaten by a gator that had been tagged in 1962. None of it fit. Unless Raymond was right. Unless there really were gators that moved between the waters of now and the waters of then. Back at the station, I pulled every file I could find on gator attacks, missing persons, unexplained deaths in the area. I went back years, decades, looking for patterns, and I found them. 1980. 3 people disappeared near the reservation. Remains were found months later in a canal, partially eaten by gators. The decomposition timeline didn't match the disappearance timeline. 1962. A series of disappearances, all near water. Some remains were found, all showing impossible decomposition rates. 18 years apart. 1962, 1980, 1998. A pattern. An 18-year cycle. And now, in 1998, it was happening again. I spread out the files on my desk, my hands shaking. If this was a cycle, if this was something that happened every 18 years, then there would be more. More disappearances. More impossible deaths. I needed to find out why. I needed to understand what was happening before more people died. And I needed to understand why a gator with a tag from 1962 was at the center of it all. The phone on my desk rang, startling me. It was Dr. Kane again. "Tim, I've got something else. We did a complete examination of the gator. I found more tags." "More? What do you mean?" "Inside the stomach. Old tags, corroded, some of them barely recognizable. I've got them here if you want to see them." I drove to her lab immediately. She had the tags laid out on a table, cleaned and photographed. 7 tags in total, all different numbers, all corroded, all old. But the dates made me sick. 1962, 1963, 1967, 1979, 1980, 1981, 1998. The years clustered around the 18-year cycle, and the 1998 tag was brand new, uncorroded. Where did the 1998 tag come from? I asked. Dr. Kane showed me the photo. It was deep in the stomach, embedded in partially digested tissue. Tim, this tag was attached to something the gator ate recently, something that was already tagged. Another gator? That would be the logical assumption. Cannibalism isn't uncommon in large males, but Tim, this tag design is current. It's the same type we're using now for the census, which means whatever the gator ate was tagged within the last few months. I stared at the tags, my mind spinning. Gators eating gators, tags from different decades, remains that didn't match their timeline. And then I remembered something. The big bull gator, the one with the 1962 tag, had been alone in that canal section. Tommy had said he was probably the dominant male. Dominant males don't tolerate rivals. They kill other large gators, establish their territory. What if this gator hadn't just been feeding on humans? What if it had been feeding on other gators from different times? I thanked Dr. Kane and drove back out to the canal where we'd found the dead bull. It was late afternoon, the sun starting to dip toward the horizon. The water was calm, mirror still, reflecting the palm trees and the darkening sky. I stood on the bank and looked out at the water. And I realized something. This wasn't just a canal. It was a feeding ground, a place where time overlapped, where gators from different eras came to hunt. And the big bull with the 1962 tag hadn't been the only one. He'd just been the one we'd found. There were others out there, gators carrying tags from decades past, gators that hunted across time, bringing back prey from futures that hadn't happened yet, and pasts that were long gone. I needed to find them. I needed to understand how this was possible. Because somewhere out there, in some database or file or record, was a list of people who were going to disappear, people who were going to be hunted by gators that shouldn't exist. And I had a terrible feeling that my name was on that list. As the sun set and the swamp came alive with the sounds of the night, I heard it. A sound that every Floridian knows, that sends a primal shiver down your spine. The bellow of a bull gator. Deep, resonant, ancient. But this one was different. This one sounded like it was coming from everywhere at once. From the past and the future and the present, all overlapping. The hunt had begun, and I was standing right in the middle of it. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed at my desk in the tribal police station, going through every file, every report, every newspaper clipping I could find about disappearances and gator attacks in south-central Florida going back to 1944, the year the Brighton Reservation was formally established. The pattern was undeniable once you knew to look for it. 1944. 4 disappearances between September and November. Only one body recovered, badly decomposed despite going missing just days before. 1962. 7 disappearances. 3 bodies found, all in or near water, all with impossible decomposition timelines. 1980. 5 disappearances. 2 bodies recovered, both showing the same temporal anomaly. And now, 1998. So far, just Robert Marsh. But it was only late September. If the pattern held, there would be more before November ended. 18 years. Perfect intervals. and always between September and November, the same 2-month window. I pulled out a calendar and marked the dates. September 21st to November 30th. That gave us about 10 weeks. 10 weeks to figure out what was happening and stop it. I was studying a map of the reservation, marking the locations where bodies had been found, when Chief Raymond walked in. It was 6 in the morning, the sky just starting to lighten outside. "You've been here all night," he said. It wasn't a question. I found something, a pattern. I showed him the files, the timeline, the locations. Every 18 years, like clockwork, people disappear, and when we find them, they've been dead longer than they've been missing. Raymond studied the maps, his expression grave. My grandfather was alive in 1962. He was one of the search party members who found the bodies that year. He told me stories about it. He said the gators were different that year. They were hunting like they had purpose, like they were following orders. Gators don't follow orders. No, but maybe something does, something that uses the gators. He pointed to the map. These locations, they're all connected. Look at the waterways. He was right. Every disappearance had occurred near the same interconnected canal system, the one that ran through the east side of the reservation and eventually connected to Lake Okeechobee. "It's a network," Raymond said. "Water flows through it, and maybe time flows through it too, if you know how to see it." "Raymond, I need to talk to your grandfather. Is he still alive?" "He passed in 1995, but he left recordings, stories he wanted preserved. They're at the Tribal Archive." By 9 a.m., I was at the Tribal Archive with Tommy and a tape player. The archivist, an older woman named Louise Jumper, helped us find the recordings. There were dozens of cassette tapes, all labeled in meticulous handwriting. We found the one marked The Hunt of 1962 and pressed play. Raymond's grandfather's voice came through the speakers speaking in Seminole. Louise translated for me as we listened. "In the year the white men call 1962, the gators came alive with old hunger. We saw them moving in ways they hadn't moved in 18 summers. They hunted together, coordinated, like they were of one mind, and they took 7 people from us. The elders said it was the Great Hunt, the cycle that has happened for as long as we have lived in these waters. Every 18 summers, the barrier between times grows thin in the feeding grounds. The gators can move through, taking prey from one time and bringing it to another. They hunt what will be, and they kill what was. My father told me that the only way to survive the hunt is to stay away from the waters. Do not go near the canals, the ponds, the swamps. Not between the time when the first corn ripens and the time when the first frost should come. Even if you see someone in the water, even if you hear them calling for help, do not go, because that person is already gone. You're just seeing them before it happened." The tape continued, Raymond's grandfather describing the specific locations where the gators had been most active. The feeding grounds, he called them. Places where the water ran deep and old, where springs fed up from the aquifer. One location stood out, a place called Sweetwater Pool, a natural spring on the eastern edge of the reservation. According to the recording, that was the center of it all, the place where the time barrier was thinnest. I looked at Tommy. "We need to go there. Tim, did you hear what he just said? Stay away from the waters. We're not going in the water. We're going to observe, document, figure out what we're dealing with." Tommy shook his head but didn't argue. We thanked Louise and headed out. Sweetwater Pool was about a 30-minute drive from the station, down increasingly rough dirt roads until we had to park and hike the last quarter mile through palmetto scrub and cypress. The air was thick with mosquitoes, and the heat was building toward the afternoon thunderstorms. We reached the pool around noon. It was bigger than I expected, maybe 50 yards across. The water so clear you could see straight to the bottom. Springs bubbled up from below, creating gentle currents on the surface. Palm trees and cypress ringed the edges, their roots creating natural caves and hideouts perfect for gators. The place was beautiful. It was also completely silent. No birds, no insects, no frogs, just the gentle sound of water moving. "This is wrong," Tommy said quietly. "It's too quiet." He was right. In the Everglades, you're never in silence. There's always life, always noise. But here, it was like the world was holding its breath. We set up our observation post on a raised limestone outcrop about 20 yards from the pool. We had binoculars, cameras, and my video recorder. If something was going to happen, I wanted it documented. We waited. An hour passed, 2 hours. The sun climbed higher, and the heat became oppressive. I was starting to think this was a waste of time when Tommy grabbed my arm. "There." He pointed to the far side of the pool. Something was moving in the water, something big. I raised my binoculars and saw it. A gator, huge, at least 15 feet. It was swimming in slow circles, its tail creating gentle ripples. As I watched, it dove. "It's hunting," Tommy whispered. The water went still. I kept my binoculars trained on the spot where it had gone under, waiting for it to resurface. Gators can hold their breath for hours, but actively hunting ones usually surface more frequently. 5 minutes, 10, 15. The gator didn't come up. Instead, the water began to change. It was subtle at first, just a slight distortion, like heat shimmer. But it grew more pronounced. The surface of the pool looked like it was vibrating, oscillating between clarity and something else. "Are you seeing this?" I asked. "Yeah, what the hell is that?" The distortion spread across the entire pool, and for just a moment I saw something impossible. The water wasn't just water anymore. It was layered, showing multiple versions of the same pool. In one layer, the pool was clear and bright, contemporary. In another, it was murkier, choked with vegetation. In another, it was completely different, smaller, the trees around it younger. "It's time," I said. "We're seeing through time." And then the gator surfaced, but not alone. In its jaws was a person. A woman, struggling, screaming. She was wearing modern clothes, a tourist's outfit, camera around her neck. The gator pulled her under. Tommy and I both moved at the same time, running toward the pool, ready to dive in and help. But before we could reach the water, the distortion cleared. The pool was normal again, just clear spring water and gentle currents. No gator, no woman, nothing. "Where did they go?" Tommy demanded. I scanned the water with my binoculars. Empty, completely empty. The gator and the woman had simply vanished. "They went somewhere else," I said, "somewhere else." We circled the pool, looking for any sign. After about 10 minutes, Tommy called out from the north side. "Tim, over here!" He was pointing at something on the bank, a camera, an expensive digital camera, the kind tourists carried. It was sitting on a rock, perfectly dry, like someone had just set it down. I picked it up carefully. The power was on. I scrolled through the photos. The first few were normal tourist shots, the woman, smiling, posing near a "Welcome to Brighton reservation" sign. Her with what looked like family members. A shot of a gator from a safe distance. The last photo made my skin crawl. It was taken from water level, looking up. In the frame, huge and terrifying, was a gator's open mouth, rows of teeth filling the frame. The timestamp said the photo was taken at 12:47 p.m. I checked my watch, 12:51 p.m., 4 minutes ago. "She's the next victim," I said. "We just watched her get taken." "But where's the body? It should be here. The gator should have surfaced with it." Not if it took her to a different time. Killed her then, not now. I pocketed the camera. We need to identify her, find out who she is, or who she's going to be. Back at the station, I connected the camera to my computer and pulled up the file information. The metadata showed the camera was registered to a Melissa Warren, address in Tampa. I ran her name through our system. No current missing persons report, but when I expanded my search to include future potential reports, flagged cases, persons of interest, I found something. Melissa Warren had filed a report with the Tampa Police Department 3 days ago. She was planning a trip to the Brighton reservation to photograph wildlife. She wanted police to know her itinerary in case anything happened. A smart woman, she'd taken precautions. But according to her itinerary, she wasn't scheduled to arrive at Brighton until tomorrow, September 29th. We just watched her get killed today, September 28th, a day before she was supposed to arrive. How is that possible? Tommy asked. The gator crossed time. It grabbed her tomorrow, pulled her back to today, and killed her somewhere else, somewhen else. I felt sick. We can't save her. It already happened, from her perspective. She's already dead, even though she's still alive right now in Tampa. So, what do? We warn her. We call her, tell her not to come. I dialed the number from the police report. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. This is Melissa Warren. I'm not available right now. Please leave a message. Ms. Warren, this is Officer Tim Billy with the Seminole Tribal Police. I need you to call me immediately regarding your planned visit to Brighton Reservation. It's urgent. Do not come to the reservation until we've spoken. I left my number and hung up. You think she'll call back? Tommy asked. I hope so. But I had a sinking feeling it was already too late. The gator had already hunted her from tomorrow. Warning her now might not change anything. I spent the rest of the afternoon trying to reach Melissa Warren. No answer. I contacted Tampa PD, asked them to do a welfare check on her address. They called back an hour later. She wasn't home. Her car was in the driveway, but she didn't answer the door. No signs of forced entry, no evidence of disturbance. Just an empty house. She left early, I told Tommy. She's probably already on her way here. We need to find her before she reaches Sweetwater Pool. We organized a patrol. 4 officers in 2 vehicles, covering the main roads into the reservation. We had Melissa's photo, her car description, everything we needed to spot her. We searched until dark, no sign of her or her car. At 8 p.m., as we were about to call off the search, my phone rang. Unknown number. Officer Billy? Yes, who is this? This is Melissa Warren. I got your message. I'm sorry I didn't call back sooner. I was driving and didn't have reception. I'm actually already at the reservation. Checked into the hotel about an hour ago. Is everything okay? My blood went cold. Miss Warren, where are you right now, exactly? I'm at the Seminole Inn, room 201. Why? What's this about? Stay in your room. Lock the door. I'm coming to get you right now. Officer, you're scaring me. Good. Stay scared. Stay inside. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I grabbed Tommy, and we drove to the Seminole Inn, a small tribal-owned hotel on the western edge of the reservation. We made it in 15 minutes, pulling up to the building with lights flashing. Room 201 was on the 2nd floor. I took the stairs 2 at a time, Tommy right behind me. I pounded on the door. Miss Warren, it's Officer Billy. Open the door. No answer. Miss Warren! Tommy tried the handle. Locked. He looked at me and I nodded. He kicked the door once, twice. On the 3rd kick, the frame splintered and the door flew open. The room was empty. The bed was made, luggage was on the stand, but no sign of Melissa. The bathroom was empty. The balcony was empty. On the nightstand, her phone was charging. I picked it up and checked the call log. The last call was to my number at 8:03 p.m., 14 minutes ago. "She was just here," Tommy said. I walked to the balcony and looked out. Below, in the parking lot, was Melissa's car. The driver's door was open. The interior light was on. We ran downstairs and checked the car. Her purse was in the passenger seat, keys in the ignition, camera in the back seat, but no Melissa. I felt that familiar cold dread settling in. She's gone. The gator took her. But how? She was inside the hotel. She wasn't near water. Maybe it doesn't matter anymore. Maybe the barrier is so thin now that they can take people anywhere on the reservation. We searched the area but found nothing. At midnight, I called off the search. Melissa Warren was gone, taken by something that hunted across time. I went back to the station and pulled her file again, staring at her photo. Young, smiling, excited about her photography trip. She'd done everything right, taken every precaution, and it hadn't mattered. I thought about what Raymond's grandfather had said. Do not go near the waters, even if you see someone calling for help, because that person is already gone. Melissa Warren had called me for help, but she was already gone, had been gone since the moment the gator decided to hunt her. As I sat there, exhausted and defeated, I noticed something on my desk. A manila envelope that hadn't been there before. No postage, no address, just my name written in neat handwriting. I opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper, a list of names, dates, and locations. 17 names in total. The first name was Robert Marsh. Date, September 23, 1998. Location, East Canal 4. Status, completed. The second name was Melissa Warren. Date, September 28, 1998. Location, Seminole Inn. Status, completed. I scanned down the list, my hands shaking. 15 more names. 15 more people who were going to disappear between now and the end of November. And at the bottom, the last name on the list was mine. Tim Billy. Date, November 28, 2015. Location, Sweetwater Pool. November 28, 2015. 17 years in the future. I was going to be hunted. Not now, not this cycle, but the next one. In 2016, 18 years from 1998, I was going to disappear into Sweetwater Pool. I sat back in my chair, staring at the list. Someone or something had given me this. A warning? A prophecy? A hunting list? I didn't know, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I had to stop the great hunt before it claimed 15 more victims, and I had 17 years to figure out how to save myself. The list sat on my desk for 3 days before I could bring myself to do anything about it. 17 names. 2 already crossed off. 15 people who were going to die between now and the end of November, and I had no idea how to stop it. I'd shown the list to Chief Raymond. He'd studied it in silence for a long time before speaking. Where did this come from? I don't know. It was just here. Do you believe it? I saw Melissa Warren get taken. I saw Robert Marsh's remains. Yeah, I believe it. Raymond had handed the list back to me. Then you have a choice. You can run from what's coming in 2015, or you can fight what's happening now. You can't do both. He was right. I had 17 years before my name came up, but these 15 people had weeks, maybe days. I decided to fight. The third name on the list was Jennifer Osceola, a tribal member from the Hollywood Reservation visiting Brighton for a family gathering. Date, October 3, 1998. Location, East Pasture Dam. I had 6 days. I called her, explained who I was, that there was a potential safety concern, asked her to delay her visit. She was skeptical but agreed to push her trip back a week. It felt like a small victory until I realized that delaying it might not matter. The gators had hunted Melissa Warren a day before she was even supposed to arrive. Time didn't work the same way for them. I needed to understand how this worked, how the gators moved through time, why they hunted, what made the barrier so thin during these cycles. I went back to the tribal archives and spent 2 days going through everything I could find about Sweetwater Pool, about the natural springs, about the geology of the area. I found old surveyor reports, water quality studies, archaeological assessments. And I found something interesting. Sweetwater Pool sat directly above a massive underground river, part of the Floridan aquifer system. The spring brought up water from 2,000 feet below the surface, water that had been underground for thousands of years. Old water flowing through limestone caves that had been carved out over millions of years. In one archaeological report from 1979, there was a note about finding unusual artifacts near the pool. Stone tools that didn't match any known Seminole or pre-Seminole culture. The archaeologist had dated them to over 10,000 years old, from the Paleo-Indian period when Florida was a very different place. And there was something else. A note scribbled in the margin. Local informants report the pool is sacred, forbidden. They say it's a place where ancestors can be seen. Recommended we cease excavation. A place where ancestors can be seen. A place where time overlapped. I called Tommy. I need to go back to Sweetwater Pool tonight. Tim, that's crazy. After what we saw? After Melissa? I need to understand what's happening there. I need to see it again, documented properly. Will you come with me? Long pause, then, yeah, I'll come. But we're bringing weapons, real ones. We met at the station at 9 p.m. after dark. In addition to our service weapons, we brought rifles, spotlights, and enough equipment to make a stand if something went wrong. We also brought diving gear. Why diving gear? Tommy asked. Because I think the answer is down there, in the spring, where the old water comes up. We drove out to Sweetwater Pool and hiked in by flashlight. The swamp was alive with night sounds now, a stark contrast to the eerie silence of daytime. Frogs, insects, the distant bellow of gators. Normal, almost reassuring. We reached the pool around 10:30. In the beam of our flashlights, the water was black and still. No distortion, no temporal overlay, just a normal Florida spring. We set up our camp on the same limestone outcrop and waited, watching the water. Midnight came and went. 1 a.m., 2 a.m., nothing. I was starting to think this was a waste of time when Tommy grabbed my arm. Look, the water was moving. Not flowing, not rippling, moving, like something underneath was pushing it, reshaping it. The surface began to distort, that same heat shimmer effect we'd seen before. And then the gators came. They surfaced one by one, huge bulls, each one easily over 12 feet. Their eyes reflected our lights like green stars. They didn't move toward us, didn't show any aggression. They just watched. I counted 7 of them, 7 gators arranged in a perfect circle around the pool. Tommy, are you seeing this? Yeah. What are they doing? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Before he could stop me, I stood up and walked to the water's edge. The gators tracked me with their eyes, but didn't move. I shined my light across the water, and in the disturbed surface, I saw it again. Multiple layers of time stacked on top of each other. I could see the pool as it was now, as it had been 100 years ago. 1,000 years ago, all existing simultaneously. And in the center of the pool, where the spring bubbled up from below, there was something else. A darkness, a void, like a tunnel leading down into time itself. It's a portal, I said. The spring is a portal through time. The gators started moving then, all at once, diving beneath the surface in perfect synchronization. The water churned, and the temporal distortion intensified. I could see scenes flashing across the surface like a movie projected on water. I saw Paleo-Indians hunting beside the pool. I saw early Seminoles building chickees. I saw white settlers arriving. I saw myself standing where I was standing now, but older, gray-haired, in a 2015 uniform. And I saw the gators hunting, taking prey from one time and carrying it to another. A deer from 1850, killed in 1980. A wild hog from 1920, killed in 1962. Humans from the future, killed in the past. They're not just hunting, I said. They're feeding the pool. They're maintaining the portal. Feeding it what? Time. They're feeding it time itself. The difference between when something lived and when it died. That difference, that temporal energy, that's what keeps the portal open. Tommy stared at me. You're saying the gators are deliberately creating these paradoxes? They're killing people out of sequence on purpose? Not on purpose, by instinct. They're like spawning salmon, coming back to the same place every cycle to perform a ritual they don't even understand. They've been doing it for thousands of years, since before humans were even in Florida. One of the gators surfaced directly in front of us. So close, I could have touched it. In the light, I could see the tag on its front leg. B0847. The bull from our census, the one that had died with Robert Marsh in its stomach. But that gator was dead. We'd performed a necropsy. Dr. Kane had examined its body. This was a different version, a version from another time, pulled forward to complete the cycle. The gator opened its mouth and I saw it. Wrapped around its teeth like dental floss was human hair. Fresh hair, still attached to flesh. Name number 4 from the list. Thomas Briggs. Date, October 5, 1998. Location, Sweetwater Pool. Thomas Briggs wasn't scheduled to disappear for another 2 days, but the gator had already killed him, already brought him back from whatever future time it had hunted him in. The gator dove, and I made a decision. I'm going in. Tim, no, someone has to see what's down there. Someone has to understand how this works if we're going to stop it. I stripped down to my shorts, pulled on the diving gear. The water was warm when I stepped in, bathtub warm, fed by the aquifer's constant temperature. I clicked on my underwater light and dove. The spring opened up below me like a throat. The main shaft went straight down, narrow at first but widening as it descended. The walls were limestone, worn smooth by millions of years of water flow. Fish darted away from my light, small, cave-adapted species that had never seen the sun. I followed the shaft down. 50 feet. 75, 100. The pressure built in my ears, and I equalized, descending deeper into the earth. At 120 feet, the shaft opened into a chamber. My light couldn't reach the far walls. It was massive, a cathedral carved by water, and it was full of bones. They covered the floor of the chamber like a carpet. Bones of every size and age. Deer, pigs, cattle, horses, and humans. So many human bones. I swam lower, examining them. Some were ancient, mineralized, thousands of years old. Others were fresh, still carrying tissue. The temporal mixing was complete here. This chamber existed in all times at once, and everything that died in the pool eventually ended up here. As I swept my light across the bone field, I saw movement. Something large shifting among the remains. A gator. But wrong. Too large, too old. Covered in algae and growth that suggested it had been down here for decades, maybe longer. Its eyes opened. Not green like a normal gator. White, milky, blind. But it could see me anyway. It could sense me through time. More gators emerged from the darkness. 5, 6, 7 of them. The same ones from the surface, or different versions, I couldn't tell. They circled me slowly, not aggressive but evaluating. And then I saw it. On the far side of the chamber, partially buried in bones. A human skeleton, relatively fresh, maybe a year old, still wearing the remains of clothing. And around its neck, a tribal police badge. I swam closer, my heart hammering. The badge was corroded but readable. Number 217. My number. This was me. This was my skeleton. From 2015, lying at the bottom of Sweetwater Pool just like the list had said. But it was only 1998. I hadn't died yet. This was my future pulled back into the present, existing here as a warning or a prophecy or a guarantee. One of the gators bumped me, hard. Not an attack, a message. Get out. This isn't your time yet. I kicked for the surface, my air running low, my mind reeling. I shot up through the shaft, past the 100-foot mark, past 75, past 50. I broke the surface, gasping, ripping off my mask. Tommy pulled me out of the water, his face pale with fear. Jesus, Tim, you were down there for 15 minutes. I thought you weren't coming back. I found it, I managed between breaths. I found where they keep the kills. And Tommy, I found me, my skeleton. From 2015. I told him everything I'd seen. The bone chamber, the temporal mixing, the ancient gators that lived in the darkness between times, and my own remains waiting for me 17 years in the future. So what does that mean? Tommy asked. You're definitely going to die here? It's predetermined? I don't know. Maybe, or maybe seeing it means I can change it. I looked back at the water. But right now, I need to focus on the 15 people who are going to die this cycle, starting with Thomas Briggs. According to the list, Thomas Briggs was supposed to disappear on October 5th. I had 36 hours. I ran his name through our system. Thomas Briggs, age 42, lived in Clewiston, worked as an electrician. No criminal record, no connection to the reservation that I could find. I called him. Mr. Briggs, this is Officer Tim Billy with the Seminole Tribal Police. I need to ask you a few questions about your plans for this weekend. My plans? Why? Do you have any reason to be visiting the Brighton Reservation in the next few days? The reservation? No, I don't think I've ever been there. Why are you asking? Sir, I can't explain right now, but it's important. If you receive any invitations to visit, any requests to come to the area, please don't go, and please call me immediately if anyone contacts you. Officer, you're freaking me out. What's this about? Just, please trust me. Stay away from the reservation, and stay away from any natural springs or pools. I hung up, hoping that would be enough. But I had a sinking feeling it wouldn't matter. The gators had already hunted him. His hair was already in that gator's teeth. October 5th came. I stationed myself at Sweetwater Pool with Tommy and 2 other officers, armed and ready. If Thomas Briggs was going to disappear here, we were going to stop it. We waited all day, no sign of him. No sign of anyone. At 8 p.m., as the sun was setting, my phone rang. Clewiston Police Department. Officer Billy, this is Detective Martinez with Clewiston PD. You called a Thomas Briggs 2 days ago? Yes. Why? We found his truck about an hour ago, abandoned on a dirt road near Lake Okeechobee. There's blood on the driver's seat, and we found this in the truck bed." I heard paper rustling. Then Martinez's voice again, confused. "It's a note. Says, 'Tell Officer Billy he can't stop it. The hunt completes itself.' Does that mean anything to you?" I closed my eyes. "Yeah, it means I'm too late." "Where exactly was the truck found?" He gave me the location. I checked my map. The spot was about 15 miles from Sweetwater Pool, near a small tributary that eventually fed into the canal system. "We're organizing a search," Martinez said. "But given the blood, we're treating this as a probable homicide. If you have any information, I'll call you back." I hung up and looked at Tommy. "They got him, somewhere else, not here, but they got him. So stationing ourselves here was pointless. No, it proves something. The gators aren't limited to Sweetwater Pool. They can hunt anywhere on the reservation, anywhere near the water system. Which means—" I felt sick. "Which means we can't protect anyone. We can't guard every mile of canal, every pond, every stream." I pulled out the list and stared at the remaining names. 13 more people. 13 more victims I couldn't save because I didn't understand the rules well enough. Unless I changed the rules. "Tommy, what if we drained Sweetwater Pool?" "What?" "The pool is the portal, the source. If we drain it, maybe we close the portal. Maybe we end the hunt." "Tim, you can't drain a spring. It's fed by the aquifer. It'll just fill back up. Then we seal it, concrete, fill, whatever it takes. We physically close the portal." Tommy looked at me like I was crazy. "You want to seal a natural spring on tribal land? Do you know how much trouble that would cause? Environmental studies, tribal council approvals, federal permits. I don't care. I'm not letting 13 more people die." I went to Chief Raymond the next morning with my plan. He listened without interrupting, then sat back in his chair. "You want to destroy a sacred spring that's been here for 10,000 years because you think it'll stop gators from hunting across time?" "Yes." "Tim, even if I wanted to approve this, the tribal council would never allow it. Sweetwater Pool is protected. It's a cultural site, an environmental resource. We can't just fill it with concrete. Then what do we do? Just let people die?" Raymond stood up and walked to the window looking out at the reservation. "My grandfather said the great hunt can't be stopped. It's part of the cycle, part of the balance. The gators hunt, people die, and the portal stays open. That's how it's always been. That's not good enough. Maybe not, but maybe the solution isn't to fight the hunt. Maybe it's to understand why it happens. Why? Why does any of this matter if people are still dying? Because if you understand why, you might find another way. A way that doesn't involve destroying something that's been here longer than our people have walked this land." I left his office frustrated and angry. 13 more names. 13 more people who were going to die because I couldn't figure out how to stop something that shouldn't even be possible. That night, alone in my office, I stared at the list again. And I noticed something I'd missed before. All the names had dates, but they weren't in chronological order. Robert Marsh, September 23rd. Melissa Warren, September 28th. Thomas Briggs, October 5th. But name number 8, Irina Kane, had a date of September 30th. Before Thomas Briggs. The hunt wasn't happening in sequence. The gators were taking people at random times, killing them at random times, but all within the September-November window, which meant the deaths had already happened. All of them. The gators had already hunted all 15 remaining victims from various future points and brought them back to die in the past. The only question was when their bodies would be found. I was too late. I'd been too late from the moment I'd found the list. Unless the list itself was a clue. Someone had given it to me. Someone who knew the hunt was happening. Someone who wanted me to see the pattern. I looked at my name again. November 28th, 2015. Sweetwater Pool. 17 years away. Plenty of time to figure this out. Plenty of time to change it. Or maybe not. Maybe I was always going to end up in that bone chamber, another skeleton in the temporal mixing bowl. My phone rang, startling me. Unknown number. Billy, Officer Billy, my name is Dr. Irina Kane. I'm a wildlife biologist from the University of Florida, and I think you and I need to talk. The voice was familiar, and then I realized why. Irina Kane. Name number 8 on the list. She was calling me. She was alive, for now. Dr. Irina Kane arrived at the Brighton reservation the next morning, driving a battered Jeep loaded with equipment. She was in her early 30s, Chinese-American, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. When I met her at the tribal police station, she didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Show me everything," she said. I did. I showed her the list, the census data, the photographs of the impossible gators. I told her about Sweetwater Pool, about the bone chamber, about finding my own skeleton from 17 years in the future. She listened without interrupting, taking notes in a worn leather field book. When I finished, she nodded slowly. "Okay, so temporal predation is real, Actually, that's exactly what I was afraid of. You were expecting this. Not this specifically, but something like it. Can I show you something?" She pulled out her laptop and opened a file folder full of documents and photographs. I've been studying alligator behavior across Florida for 3 years, focusing on population genetics and movement patterns. 6 months ago, I started finding anomalies. Gators with genetic markers that don't match their apparent age. Animals appearing in locations they couldn't have reached through normal movement. And then I found this. She showed me a photograph of a gator tag, similar to the ones we'd found. But this one was different. Instead of a standard issue number, it had coordinates and a date. 32.5 degrees north, 81.2 degrees west, 2043. 2043, 45 years in the future. Yes, I found this tag inside a gator we necropsied in the Okefenokee Swamp last month. The gator was approximately 50 years old, which would put its birth around 1948. But this tag is from 2043, and it was embedded in partially digested tissue. Someone or something tagged this gator in the future, and the gator ate them in the past. Where did you get the coordinates? That's what brought me here. 32.5 north, 81.2 west. That's Sweetwater Pool on the Brighton reservation. I felt cold. You're on the list, aren't you? Name number 8, September 30th. I know. I've known since the tag appeared on my desk 3 days ago. She pulled another tag from her pocket, this one clean and new. This showed up in my office. Same design, same coordinates, but the date is September 30th, 1998. Today. Someone's warning you. Or summoning me, I don't know which, but I couldn't ignore it. If there's a temporal anomaly centered here, I need to understand it, even if it kills me. It will kill you, that's how this works. The gators have already hunted you from some future point. Your death is already locked in. Maybe. Or maybe the fact that I know about it means I can change it. Predestination versus free will, the ultimate scientific question. She smiled grimly. And I'm going to get the answer today, one way or another. Dr. Kane, Irina. And before you try to stop me, understand that I'm going to Sweetwater Pool whether you come with me or not. I'd prefer backup, but I'll go alone if I have to. I studied her face, looking for fear. I found determination instead. She knew she was walking toward her death and she was doing it anyway. Okay, but we do this smart. Full tactical support, weapons, spotters, and we document everything. We assembled a team by noon. Me, Tommy, Irina, and 2 other tribal officers, Danny Johns and Frank Cypress. We carried rifles, sidearms, emergency medical equipment, and Irina's scientific gear. We also brought something unusual at Irina's request, a large quantity of methylene blue dye, the kind used to trace water movement. If Sweetwater Pool is a temporal portal, she explained as we loaded the vehicles, it should have certain properties: quantum coherence, temporal displacement, things we can measure. The dye will help us see the flow patterns, identify where the temporal current is strongest. Chief Raymond met us before we left. He looked at the equipment, the weapons, the grim faces of the team. "You're going to try to stop it," he said. It wasn't a question. "We're going to try to understand it," I replied. Maybe that's the same thing. My grandfather would say you can't stop what's meant to be. But he would also say that understanding is its own kind of victory. Raymond put his hand on my shoulder. "Be careful, Tim. Don't trade 15 deaths for 6. We hiked to Sweetwater Pool in the afternoon heat, arriving around 2 p.m. The place was as silent as always, the water mirror still. No gators visible, no distortion, nothing to suggest we were standing at the edge of a temporal anomaly. Irina set up her equipment on the limestone outcrop, while the rest of us established a perimeter. She had sensors, cameras, and what looked like a heavily modified fish finder that she claimed could detect temporal wake patterns. "The theory is simple," she said as she worked. "If objects are moving through time in this pool, they'll create displacement, like a boat creating wake. My equipment should pick that up." She lowered a sensor into the water and watched her laptop screen. Almost immediately, the readings went haywire. "There, see that? Massive temporal displacement, centered at about 120 feet down, right where you said the bone chamber is." She pointed to oscillating waves on her screen. "And look at this. The displacement isn't constant. It pulses, like a heartbeat, approximately every 3.7 seconds. "What does that mean?" Tommy asked. "I have no idea, but it's regular, which suggests it's not random. Something down there is actively maintaining the portal, keeping it open." She looked at me. "When you were down there, did you notice anything rhythmic? Any sounds, movements, anything that repeated?" I thought back to my dive, to the bone chamber and the ancient gators. The gators, they were breathing, all of them synchronized, in and out like they were sharing a single set of lungs. Irina's eyes widened. "That's it. They're not just guarding the portal, they're powering it. They're breathing, their metabolic processes, they're generating the temporal field. That's why there are always 7 of them. 7 gators, 7.4 seconds per breath cycle, divided by 2 for inhalation and exhalation." "Irina, you're losing me." "The gators are a living machine, Tim. They've evolved or been trained to maintain this portal through their collective biological processes, which means if we want to close it, we'd have to kill all 7 of them simultaneously. Can we do that? Probably. But should we? If the portal closes, what happens to everyone who's ever been taken? Everyone in that bone chamber? Do they cease to exist? Do they get trapped in some kind of temporal stasis?" She shook her head. "We don't know enough about the mechanism. Closing it could be worse than leaving it open. So what do? We learn, we document, we try to understand why this happens every 18 years, and whether there's a way to minimize the casualties without destroying something that's clearly been functioning for millennia." Tommy had been quiet, but now he spoke up. "What if the casualties are the point? What if the Great Hunt isn't a bug, it's a feature?" Irina looked at him. "Explain." My grandmother used to talk about balance, how the old ways taught that everything has a cost, that you can't take without giving. What if the portal needs deaths? What if those 15 people every 18 years are the price we pay for something else? For what? I demanded. What could possibly be worth 15 lives? I don't know, but maybe we should find out before we try to change it. Irina was nodding slowly. He's right. We're making assumptions. We're assuming the hunt is malicious, that it's something to be stopped. But what if it's serving a purpose we don't understand? 13 more people are going to die, I said. That's not an assumption, that's a fact. I can't just let that happen because we don't understand the cosmic reasoning behind it. I'm not saying we let it happen. I'm saying we need more data. Irina started strapping on diving gear. I need to go down there again. I need to see the bone chamber, study the gators, try to understand the mechanism. Irina, that's suicide. You're on the list for today. I know, which means if I'm going to die anyway, I might as well get some good data first. She checked her air tank, her rebreather, her underwater cameras. Besides, maybe I can bargain with them. Bargain with who? The gators? With whatever intelligence is coordinating them. Because, Tim, gators don't tag themselves. Someone or something has been marking these animals, tracking them across time. That suggests intelligence, planning, purpose. Maybe I can talk to them. Before I could stop her, she was in the water. But this time I wasn't going to just watch. I grabbed my own diving gear. Tommy, if we're not back in 30 minutes, call the tribal council. Tell them everything. Tim, wait, but I was already in the water, descending after Irina's light. The spring shaft opened up below me, and I followed her down through the darkness. 50 feet, 75, 100. At 120 feet we entered the bone chamber. Irina was already there, floating in the center of the space her cameras recording. The 7 gators surrounded her in a perfect circle, not aggressive, just watching. Their breathing was synchronized, just as I'd remembered. In and out, slow and deliberate, creating subtle currents in the water. I swam to Irina's side. Through her mask, I could see her eyes were wide with wonder, not fear. She pointed to the bones covering the floor. Not random piles, I realized now. Patterns. The bones were arranged in complex geometric designs, spirals and circles and shapes I didn't recognize. Mathematical precision in death. Irina pulled out a waterproof slate and started writing. She showed it to me. Not random. They're building something. I looked closer at the patterns. She was right. The bones weren't just deposited here, they were placed, arranged, organized into some kind of structure or design that extended across the entire chamber floor. Irina swam to the edge of the pattern and carefully examined one of the spirals. Then she wrote again. Fibonacci sequence. Golden ratio. This is mathematics. The gators watched us but didn't move. Their collective breathing continued, steady and rhythmic. And as I listened to it, as I felt the water move with their breath, I began to understand something. They weren't just maintaining the portal, they were calculating with it, using the temporal displacement to solve equations, to process information across time. The bone chamber wasn't a killing floor, it was a computer. A biological quantum computer that had been running for 10,000 years. Irina saw it too. She wrote, "They're predicting, calculating which deaths cause least temporal damage. The hunt is optimized." I stared at her note. The gators weren't hunting randomly. They were selecting victims based on temporal mathematics, choosing people whose deaths would create the smallest ripples in the timeline. 15 people every 18 years, precisely calculated to maintain temporal stability while minimizing overall harm. It was monstrous. It was elegant. It was terrifying and beautiful at the same time. Irina wrote again, "If we stop the hunt, timeline becomes unstable. Could cause paradoxes, temporal collapse. The 15 deaths prevent millions." I wanted to argue, to deny it, to insist there had to be another way. But looking at the mathematical precision of the bone patterns, at the ancient intelligence that had built this system, I knew she was right. The Great Hunt wasn't evil, it was necessary. One of the gators moved then, swimming directly to Irina. Not attacking, approaching. It opened its mouth, and inside I saw something that shouldn't be there. A tag, like the ones we'd been finding, but this one was attached to something else. A small device, technological, clearly not from our time. The gator carefully dislodged it with its tongue and let it float toward Irina. She caught it and examined it. Even underwater, I could see her expression change from confusion to shock to understanding. She wrote frantically, "It's a calculator from 2043. Someone sent this back. Instructions for optimizing the hunt." The gator that had given her the device swam closer, and I saw its tag. Not B0847, not any number I recognized. It said S. Kane, 2043. Irina saw it too. She went very still, staring at the tag on the gator's leg. Her own name, her own future. This wasn't a gator, or it was, but it was also something more, something that had once been Dr. Irina Kane, transformed by 45 years in the temporal current, evolved or devolved into something that could survive in the space between times. The gator that was Irina opened its mouth again, and sound came out. Not a bellow, not a hiss. Words. Distorted, garbled by the water and the transformation, but understandable. 1. Volunteer, per cycle. Break, the random hunt. Choose, freely, balance, maintained. Irina understood before I did. She wrote, voluntary sacrifice. One person chooses to enter the bone chamber each cycle. Becomes part of the calculation. Prevents the random 15. She looked at me, and I saw the decision in her eyes. I grabbed her slate and wrote, "No. We'll find another way." She shook her head and wrote back, "There is no other way. I'm already on the list. I've already been hunted, but if I choose to go, if I volunteer, I can replace all 15. The math changes." I tried to grab her, to pull her back to the surface, but she was already removing her air tank. The gators circled closer, not threatening, welcoming, accepting her choice. Irina wrote one last message. "Tell my family I chose this. Tell them it mattered. Tell the Seminole to find volunteers every 18 years. One life saves 15. Do the math." Then she let go of the slate, took one last breath from her tank, and swam to the center of the bone spiral. The gators closed around her. Their breathing synchronized with hers, and slowly, gracefully, she settled to the chamber floor, becoming part of the pattern, part of the calculation, part of the eternal machine that kept time itself from tearing apart. I wanted to scream, but I was underwater. I wanted to save her, but she'd already saved herself by choosing. All I could do was watch as doctor. Irina Kane became part of the Great Hunt, voluntarily, mathematically, necessarily. The future gator, the one that had been Irina in 2043, swam to me one last time. It opened its mouth and dropped something into my hand. Another tag. This one said, M. Billy, 2015. Cancelled. My name, my death date, crossed out. Irina's choice had changed the equation. By volunteering, she'd removed me from the list. saved my life by trading hers. The gators began to move then, their circle breaking. They swam past me, around me, and I felt something change in the water. The temporal current shifted, stabilized. The calculations had been updated. The hunt was over. I surfaced alone, gasping, grief and wonder mixing in my chest. Tommy pulled me out of the water, his face pale. "Where's Irina?" "She's gone. She chose to stay. She saved 13 people by volunteering." Tommy understood immediately. He'd grown up with the old stories, the old ways. The concept of voluntary sacrifice wasn't foreign to him. Did it work? I think so. I think she changed the whole system. We packed up the equipment in silence. Irina's laptop was still recording data, still showing the temporal displacement patterns. But they were different now. Smoother, more stable. I took the laptop and her research back to the tribal police station. Chief Raymond was waiting for us. I told him everything. About the bone chamber, about the mathematical patterns, about the gators being a biological quantum computer, about Irina's choice. 1 volunteer per cycle, I said. That's how we stop the random hunt. The Seminole can make it sacred, make it meaningful. Someone who's dying anyway, someone who wants their death to matter, they can choose to enter the pool. 1 life every 18 years instead of 15 random victims. Raymond was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. "I'll bring it to the tribal council. This is bigger than police work now. This is spiritual, cultural. We'll need medicine people, elders, people who understand the old ways and can help us create a new one." Over the next weeks, the council debated. Some elders said it was wrong to institutionalize sacrifice. Others said it was exactly what the old ways had always taught, that balance requires cost, that leadership means choosing to bear the burden. In the end, they created the guardian tradition. Every 18 years during the September-November window, the tribe would hold a ceremony at Sweetwater Pool. Anyone who wished could volunteer to become the guardian, to enter the bone chamber and maintain the temporal balance. They didn't expect volunteers, but in 1999, when we held the first ceremony, 3 people stepped forward. All elderly, all terminally ill, all wanting their deaths to serve a purpose. Joseph Jumper was chosen. He was 84, dying of cancer, a respected elder who'd served in World War II and come home to help rebuild the reservation. He walked into Sweetwater Pool on October 15, 1999, and he never came out. But the hunt didn't happen that year. No random victims, no temporal kidnappings, just 1 chosen sacrifice, made with full knowledge and consent. The tradition continued. 2016, another volunteer. 2034, another. Each time, someone stepped forward to take the burden, to become part of the eternal calculation. I made it to 2015. November 28th came, the date that had been written on the tag, and nothing happened. I lived because Irina had died in my place, had changed the mathematics of fate itself. I retired from tribal police in 2020 at age 58. My daughter Lily had already joined the force, carrying on the family tradition. I told her everything about Sweetwater Pool, about the great hunt, about what Irina Kane had done. "It's not fair," she said. "One person shouldn't have to die for everyone else." "No," I agreed. "It's not fair. But it's better than 15 people dying randomly, and at least now the person gets to choose. That's something. That's agency in the face of fate." Lily became the primary guardian of the pool tradition, the officer who oversaw each 18-year ceremony. She took it seriously, making sure every volunteer understood what they were choosing, making sure the tribe honored their sacrifice. I'm 72 years old now, writing this in 2034. The next cycle is in 2 years, 2036. Lily tells me they already have a volunteer lined up. A 60-year-old man named Robert Kane, Irina's nephew, who was diagnosed with ALS and wants to follow in his aunt's footsteps. I think about Irina often, about her bravery, her sacrifice, her transformation into something beyond human understanding. Sometimes, when I visit Sweetwater Pool, I swear I can feel her presence in the water, in the mathematical precision of the currents, in the synchronized breathing of the 7 gators who still guard the bone chamber. The Seminole are unconquered. We've survived genocide, relocation, cultural erasure, and attempts to destroy us for 300 years. We've survived because we adapt, because we understand sacrifice, because we know that some fights can't be won through strength alone. The great hunt is part of us now. Not a curse we endure, but a sacred duty we've chosen to bear. We guard the portal. We maintain the balance. We ensure that time continues to flow, that paradoxes are prevented, that the fabric of reality holds together. One life every 18 years. It's a terrible price, but it's better than the alternative. And maybe, in some strange way, it's made us stronger. It's given meaning to deaths that would otherwise be meaningless. It's created a tradition of selfless service that reminds us what it means to be Seminole. We are unconquered because we choose our battles. We are unconquered because we understand sacrifice. We are unconquered because we adapt. And we are unconquered because we learn to make peace with monsters by becoming guardians ourselves. The gators still swim in Sweetwater Pool. They still maintain their ancient calculation, still guard the bone chamber where 10,000 years of death has been transformed into something beautiful and terrible and necessary. And we stand watch beside them, partners in the eternal balance. Guardians of the feeding grounds, keepers of the promise that time itself will not break as long as someone is willing to pay the price. I'll be 89 in 2051 when the next cycle after 2036 comes around. Too old to volunteer, probably too old to even attend the ceremony, but I'll know it's happening. I'll know that somewhere someone will walk into Sweetwater Pool and join Irina Kane in the bone chamber. Someone will choose to become part of the calculation, part of the machine that keeps reality stable. And I'll know that because of that choice, 15 families won't lose their loved ones to random temporal predation. 15 lives will continue uninterrupted, 1 death preventing 15. The math is simple. The courage required to do it is not. But the Seminole have never lacked for courage. We are the unconquered, and we always will be.